there are a few things that I have not mentioned in the last episode of Indie Game Academy when I was talking about Yume Nikki, and I would like to say them right now. First of all, Kikiyama has been updating the game consistently from 2004 all the way up to the year 2008, which I think it went from version 0.01, I think, to 0.10. Yes, if there's like an official 1.0 release, it doesn't exist. I guess you could say Yume Nikki is an unfinished game. And after that, there was nothing new to Yume Nikki, and that's when people thought Kikiyama's died. However, in 2014, marking the 10th anniversary of Yume Nikki, Kikiyama came back and released the Yume Nikki project, which basically consisted of an official release of the Yume Nikki soundtrack, like an official release of Yume Nikki soundtrack, like it's on vinyl, and if you don't have a record player, you can listen to it on Spotify and I think iTunes too. There was also a Yume Nikki soundtrack B-sides, which was like remixes made by fans. There's also real life merch and goodies, so there's that. And a new update to Yume Nikki. That was version 0.10a. No, it's not 1.0, what do you expect? No, but it's 0.10a, which I think is supposed to be like a bug patch of some sorts. Which also added an official English translation. That's right. Yume Nikki did not have an official English translation before. It was all a fan translation, which everyone thought it was the most accurate one, but now there's an official translation. It was all made also thanks to Playism. I mean, Kikiyama contacted Playism to release the new update and the official English translation. And it was going on until the year 2018. That's when the Yume Nikki project officially concluded with an official Steam release. That's right, an official Steam release. Yume Nikki was no longer on some obscure and shady Japanese freeware video game website. No, now it's on Steam, where everyone can play it. That's the first thing I wanted to say, and second, because that was my first video, I wanted to apologize to you all for not including a good amount of gameplay. I'm gonna make sure to step up my editing skills in the next videos, and hopefully, maybe in the next 10 years I might remake the first episode and make it better. Now, let's go back to the video. Today, we are looking at the second biggest pillar of indie games, followed by Yume Nikki, and that is Cave Story. Cave Story, directly translated from its Japanese title, Dokutsu Monogatari, is a side-scroller video game released in the year 2004 by Daisuke Amaya, also known as Pixel. Before I go into the story of the game, I would like to mention that Pixel has been working on this game for the better part of 5 years, all by himself, no help at all. That is a really big achievement, considering the fact that the game was critically acclaimed as one of the best indie games of all time. So, good on you, Pixel. Now, let's go into the story. So, this game takes place in a time where the entire planet Earth has been under the ruling of a great king and many of his underlings, but one of those underlings stood out, called Balos, who held really immense magical power, and the king, really envious and jealous of Balos, ordered to capture, imprison and torture him. And that went on for a few months, until Balos decided that was enough. He used his own magical powers for his own good, destroyed the prison, killed the king, and went on to destroy the entire kingdom. But there was one person who stopped it. That's right. It's his own sister, Yenka, the same person who followed the king's order to imprison Balos. and also pulled the kingdom up from the earth and turned it into a big floating island. So Yenka and Balos have been fighting for a really long time, and Balos did all his best to destroy the island, and Yenka did all her best to keep it floating. So that went on for quite some time. But what they didn't know is that when the kingdom was pulled from the earth, they also pulled a good number of cave systems along with it. And in those caves were living creatures inside of them, like animals and stuff, and something called mimigas, which we're gonna be talking about them later. The only survivors of the island were Balos and Yenka, obviously, but also Yenka's daughter, Misery. So Misery has found Balos' new prison and convinced her uncle, Balos, to build an evil crown that once you put it on your head, you would have great magical powers and be able to control anyone who consumes red flowers. That's right, there were a good number of red flowers scattered around the island, and those were bad. Those are bad flowers. You don't consume them. And if you do, well, you'll basically be manipulated and gaslit into doing bad stuff, and that's basically what the crown was supposed to do. Balos built the crown and made it powerful. And Misery, well, she liked that. What she did not know is that Balos, of course, Balos had another thing coming. He cursed Misery and made it so that whoever got a hold of it would also be able to control and manipulate Misery's powers, along with Balrog's. Not Balrog of Lord of the Rings, it's another character, we'll talk about him later. So of course there were some creatures who heard about the crown and decided to go after it. Luckily, all those, and there weren't that many creatures, there were like one or two that actually got the crown, but they were all imprisoned, so nothing too bad has happened. But that did not last long, as a few years later, there were also humans who heard about the existence of the evil crown. And of course, we humans like anything that looks red and shiny, so they went on after the crown. There were like lots of people, and that resulted in a really big behemoth. There was a human who got a hold of the crown, Mia Kid, and due to that, lots of Mimigas, we'll still talk about them later, were assassinated, they were massacred. Worst of all, some people cooperated with robots and made some Mimigas consume those evil red flowers, which made them bad. They made them corrupt, they made them evil, they made them, like buff. It was horrible. There was one human who stayed in this place. Of course, he didn't go to the island. But he figured out that was not good. What the humans were doing there was not good. So he built 2 robots that were specifically designed to kill whoever wanted to get the crown. This is where our protagonists come in place. These robots are called Quote and Curly Brace, or simply Curly, like Curly Howard from the Three Stooges. So Quote and Curly, they came in quite late, as all this monolith has happened, and they found Mia Kid, the human who had the crown in the big head, and they had no other choice but to fight Mia Kid. But that ended up pretty badly, as all of them got badly hurt. Mia Kid died of bleeding, severe bleeding. Curly was seriously injured, and Quote went comatose. So, whilst Quote was peacefully in his sleep, Curly took the time to take care of the lost Mimigas, and also went on to destroy the red evil flowers and its seeds back into the Sand Zone, where Yenka Bowser's sister, contained them. They were never meant to come out of there in the first place. So it seems everything was at peace again. That's what it seems like. Well, not really. 10 years later, a group of humans came onto the island. Those being Momorin Sakamoto, followed by his two sons, Sue and Kazuma, Ito, Professor Booster, and Dr. Fuyuhiko Date, simply known as Doctor. So the Doctor got a hold of the crown, of course. Everyone gets a hold of the crown nowadays. It's like a tourist attraction. So the Doctor got a hold of the crown and he became evil, using the power of the crown along with Misery's power. Let's not forget about Misery. He turned Ito and Sue into Mimigas. That's right, there were now usurpers in the Mimiga race. It was suspected that Momorin Sakamoto was thrown off the island by the Doctor and passed away. Professor Booster and Kazuma were both imprisoned, and luckily Ito and Sue managed to escape. In Mimiga form, obviously. Then the Doctor ordered Misery to capture more Mimigas and use them as slaves to make more red flowers and then make them eat them. There was Arthur, the hero of the Mimigas, who fought the Doctor relentlessly. But sadly, he was killed too. After 10 years of deep sleep, our comatose son of a bitch hero quote has rose again. I'm ready to fight the evil forces of the crown and the flowers. And that is when the game actually begins. It would be kind of complicated to explain the entirety of Cave's story in a 20-minute video because there is a lot to it, but the main context would be you playing as Quote, getting out of that cave, stepping into the big world full of enemies and danger, and doing your best to rescue the Mimiga bloodline as well as the human survivors. Also freeing Misery and defeating the Doctor and destroying the curse of the crown once and for all. That would basically sum up the whole experience of Cave's story. I would also like to mention that this video game has a soundtrack that was composed with an obscure and unusual technology, but sounds really good. It sounds like a typical 8-bit video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, but obviously a lot cooler. It's composed using the ORG system, which is kind of like MIDI, and it's still really cool. And you get some really sick themes like the Mimiga Village, Grass Town, and my favorite, personally, the best boss entrance cutscene and fight in the whole game. So overall, you can see why it's regarded as the greatest indie game of all time, but the story behind Cave's story does not end here. There's this American video game company called Nicalis has been responsible for porting Cave's story to other platforms. Like for example, the first ever major re-release of Cave's story was on the Wii. It was sort of controversial because the game was free all this time, and making people charge for a freeware game didn't really seem like something very wise. They also released Cave's Story Plus on Steam, which is regarded as a shitty remake. I mean, it's basically just Cave's Story with 1080p resolution, a good number of bugs, a shitty art style remake that absolutely no one liked. A few years after that, when Nintendo released the Nintendo 3DS, Nicalis made another port of Cave's Story for the 3DS. They somehow actually kept it faithful to the original. There was no big difference from the original, no art style remake or whatever, it was actually good. But there was another version called Cave's Story 3D, which was also released by Nicalis, and it's basically a 3D remake of Cave Story, milking it once again. And they released what could be the definitive edition of Cave Story, simply titled Cave Story, and it was for the Nintendo Switch, and that one is regarded as the best release of Cave Story. So you can see that Nicalis has done not so good things with the game. They've milked everything out of the game just for profit. And you might think that Pixel would be mad, but he's not really that mad. I mean, he's gotten along with the executive director of Nicalis, who a lot of people say is not a very good founder. But that is not something that we can discuss. All we can say is that Nicalis could have done better with Cave Story. But as long as the tribute site is up, you are always able to download the original for absolutely free.